Welcome to Eastlake Online. This is a condensed version of what we do live every Sunday at the Uptown Theater. We know it's not always possible or even preferred to be a part of what we do in person, so that's why we made this. Thanks for checking it out. In just a minute, someone is going to give a short talk that hopefully resonates with you and helps you interpret what it might mean to follow in the way of Jesus, because that's what this community is all about. Figuring out what it might look like to live life the way that Jesus did, except in our current context with like cell phones and self-driving cars and stuff. We're a community where everyone is invited, included, and involved no matter what. And though our physical location is in the budding metropolis of the Tri-Cities, wherever you're watching this from, we want to invite you to bring a bit of heaven into your part of the world. Thanks for catching us on the interwebs. If you're looking for more content, follow us on social media or keep checking our website for all kinds of resources that we hope are helpful. And now, this.
'Cause home's where this heart belongs.
Welcome to Eastlake
Why
Online.
is it
This is a
that we
condensed
never
version of what we do
outgrow
live every
videos
Sunday
of
at the
people
Uptown.
hurting themselves? That's never not funny to us. I mean, as long as they survive and get up and stuff like that. But as long as that's the case, those are always funny to me. And sometimes it feels juvenile. And there's a lot of things. I mean, fart jokes are still funny. They're still funny. I mean, it's weird how that works. I shared a video this week with some friends that was too inappropriate to be able to show on Sunday mornings because I respect the pastoral position too much. But you feel bad. I send it and then I have to apologize. I know I shouldn't be laughing at this, but this is funny. And we think about it and we think there are just some things, humor being one of them, that I hope I never outgrow. And maybe there's other things in life that fall in that category too. In fact, today we're going to be talking about a question that I hope that we never outgrow, and that'll be the topic of part 5 today. We are following along in a series of 5 of 6, so next week's the big finale, a series called You're Not Far, a series on the kingdom. For those of you watching online right now, welcome. We're so glad that you're tuning in for this or watching this on replay. For those in the room, thanks for being here. Appreciate you guys making it happen this morning. We have been following along in a series that has basically looked at the Mark's version of the life and the teaching of Jesus. We know everything that we know about Jesus comes to us from the 4 gospel narratives or perspectives. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they make up the first 4 books of the New Testament. Many of them are written by disciples of Jesus, and we don't want to let our stories die with us. Here they are. Mark's is a little bit unique in that it was probably the first one written, and it comes to us, church tradition tells us, from the perspective of Paul, even though John Mark was the author for it. There's a tradition that says that Peter, who had kind of been one of Jesus' inner ring closest disciples, had more access to Jesus in his stories than like most anybody else, right? And then has the whole denial thing of him, and then at the resurrection, he's restored, and he begins to be basically the CEO of the church post Jesus' resurrection. He'd become one of the more famous and public disciples. Peter would have a huge following in that way, and he would go on and lead the church organization for about 30 years, and it says that he ended his time in a prison in Rome, probably about to be martyred for the faith, and he sits down with John Mark, because Peter probably didn't even know how to read and write. He came from a fisherman background, and so sits down with Mark and says, here's my stories, here's everything I know about Jesus, write it down so that future generations will know the kind of person that I knew. And that's what we get with this Gospel of Mark. And we've been looking at it, not necessarily verse by verse, but kind of story by story, jumping through some things. And right away, he gives us the lead. He gives us the big idea. In verse 1, he says, this is the story, this is the good news about Jesus, the Messiah, the Son of God, who came and had a mission. He came and taught the good news. And what is the good news? If you grew up in church, we often equate the good news with the story of Jesus, like the life, death, and burial and resurrection of Jesus and what it means for us. But there's no way that Jesus could have taught that as good news because it hadn't even happened yet. So what was Jesus' good news? In verse 15, he says, the time has now come. Like everything that has come before has pointed to this, referring to the Old Testament, but also to history in general. Everything that has come before has pointed to this moment. Everything in the future will point back to this moment. This is a critical juncture in time. The time has now come. The kingdom of God is near or within reach or it's at hand, or it's right before you. In other words, the God that you believe that somehow exists somehow out there, or this presence of love or whatever overarching being has made himself known, as Eugene Peterson would write later in the Message version of the Bible. God has taken on flesh and moved into the neighborhood, right? So the time has come, everything's now, the kingdom of God is here. Repent and believe. That, I think, is what the good news is. Repent, turn away from whatever option that you were living, and instead trust and rest in this idea that God is near, God is near with us right now. So, when we left off, Jesus had some things to say about some Pharisees and some hypocrites within the church. And so if you are a proponent of anti-hypocrisy within the church, you loved last week, all right? And if you weren't here because you were camping or doing whatever, then you're kind of a hypocrite in that way. So anyway, that's fine. You got to deal with that on your own thing. But you can go, of course, I'm just kidding, of course. You can go on the internet to eastlaketricities.com/talks, catch up with that talk or any of the previous 4 talks. And go here or download the app. They're accessible through that as well. All right. Jesus is finished with that. Now he's taken his disciples up to the mountaintop in Caesarea Philippi. He's asked them the question, what's the word on the street about me? Who do people say that I am? And they're throwing out some options. Some say you're Elijah. Some say you're a prophet. You're like Jonah. You're like something. We don't exactly know, but and then Jesus turns it on them. Who do you say that I am? And Peter looks at him straight in the eye and he says, I think that you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Like, I think all those categories that we've kind of set aside for this, our anticipatory hopes for a Jewish Messiah, I think come to be in the form of you. I think that you're it, and I don't know what else to say. You're unlike anything I've ever seen before, and I think anybody else has seen before. And Jesus looks back at Peter and he says, Peter, on this rock I'll build my church. And if you're Catholic, you think that means that Peter became the first Catholic and the church is built on him. If you're a Protestant, basically it's like that, maybe that statement of what he said of Jesus being the Messiah. So then the thing that sets us apart from any other religion is that we just think that God, the Logos, God that's out there, made himself known through Jesus. That the whole Jesus thing sets us apart as different. We just think that Jesus is different. And so anyways, he builds a church on that way. Then they leave Caesarea Philippi, and they're about to make their way back down to Jerusalem. And I say back down to Jerusalem because throughout the Gospels, all 4 Gospels, they kind of make these different treks. They go up north into Galilee. That's kind of where he's from. Galilee, Nazareth, Capernaum, up in that Sea of Galilee area. And then there's a Jordan River that goes down, and the Dead Sea's down here. And right around the corner from that is Jerusalem. So if 2 very different versions of kind of the Jesus narrative. When he's in the north, he's popular and well-loved. When he's in the south, he's constantly facing critics and religious leaders. And so he goes back and forth between them, and depending on which gospel you read, it'll tell you, how many times he goes and does this. But he's about to go back down to Jerusalem, and he's kind of prepping his disciples for what to expect. Anytime they go down there, there's always been resistance. There's always been less crowds, less popularity, more critique, more what about kind of thing. And so they're very familiar with him kind of having to say, this is going to be a little bit more difficult than what we're used to. Well, of course it is. We're going to Jerusalem. It's like the epicenter of faith. And anytime religion and politics are involved in a central area, there's going to be some issues with this. Verse 31 of chapter 8, he then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and then rise again in 3 days, right? Which probably was very confusing for them. There's definite appearances of them probably not understanding when he's relating himself to the Son of Man, which is like this Jewish figure, and then he talks about impending, crucifixion, death, and none of them seem to be like, oh, we understand it, because none of them show up on Easter morning outside the tomb on day 3, counting down from 10, 9, 8, 7. None of them are there, so I don't think that they really understood what was happening. It's just 30 years after it happened, you recall how clear Jesus was and how dumb we were to miss it, right? So I think that's what's happening here. So Jesus has these comments for him, and then it says this, Peter took him aside. And again, this is coming to us from the perspective of Peter. So he's writing himself in poorly in this situation. He took him aside and began to rebuke him. The student is rebuking the master. The apprentice is rebuking the master. And I think what he's trying to rebuke him with is, hey man, you're talking like this is really bad, but like you're in control of this. You get to control this. Anytime you speak so negatively and so down on this situation, it affects all of us too, man. Can you think of us in this whole process, right? Don't talk this way. And I think he's trying to be Like maybe the friend who, when you're going through something bad, is like super optimistic, even to the point of denial of reality. And I just told you I have cancer. Yeah, I know, but like it's all good, man. Like a lot of people have cancer. And you're like, can you just like dwell with me into this is going to suck for a while, period, instead of just jumping immediately into optimism? So I think that's what's taking place with this. So Jesus then turns to him and begins to, but Jesus turned and looked at him and his disciples, and he rebuked Peter. And here comes my favorite verse for when my friends tell me they don't think the Seahawks are going to be any good this year, which happens every single year. Oh my gosh, that's their secondary, right? Verse 33, get behind me, Satan. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns, right? Get behind me. It's the same story every year, whatever. And it's this idea of Jesus looking at them going, you're not in a position to be able to tell me what I should or should not fear in this way, right? You don't even know. You're anticipating this kingdom that's not really like the kingdom that I'm talking about. You're anticipating a kingdom like all other kingdoms, but this is not that type of kingdom. The kingdom that I have come to initiate is not like that. And every word that we use, language is funny because it all has meaning attached to it. And depending on which culture you come from, there's different, like words can mean different things to different people. And so you have to be like, which version, what are you talking about when you say kingdom? And this is Jesus going, we're talking about two different things, and you have this inability to see. That's not the kingdom that I'm talking about. When you say, we can't wait for you to be king or whatever, you're thinking king as in sitting on a throne, dictating rulers and having people work over me and all this kind of stuff. That's not the kind of king that I'm talking about. I am going to be king, right? I am king. I will be king over all creation, but that's not in the way that you think about it as being a king and all the authority and all the I say things and things happen that you think it happens. So Jesus gathers disciples together. And he says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Here's the 3-step process to following as a disciple. What does it mean to be a follower of Christ? And we gather together each week and we say, what does it mean to follow in the way of Christ and the way that he taught life? And we think that that's probably the best way to do life. So what does it mean? Well, there's a 3-step process according to Jesus, if we take him at his word here, is to deny ourselves, to take up whatever cross that we have, and to follow him. In other words, for these disciples, fun time is now over. If you thought it was like bad, or if you thought it was kind of an uphill struggle, it's only going to get worse from here. And here's my secret to the good life. And everybody, by the way, has their vision of a secret to the good life, right? We spend our entire life buying into what other people's version, we look at them and evaluate if we want to live that kind of a life. We see like the whole stuff of Magnolia Silos, and we say, I'll buy a Magnolia Journal. Joanna, tell me what the vision of the good life is. What's the secret sauce to the good life? How many shiplaps should be in my house? What percentage does it belongs there? We look at, if Oprah reads this book, and this is her book of the month, if she's seemed to have a good touch on reality, I'm going to buy into that thing, or I'm going to watch this and click this and watch this video of this Instagram influencer who feels like has a good vision of the good life. And we're always, always, always searching with our time, with our money, with our attention towards everybody else's explanation of the good life. And so right here, Jesus gives us his. Here's the snapshot. You want a vision? You want the secret sauce to what a good life looks like? Here it is. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. You want to save your life? You got to lose it. You got to pick up your cross, you got to deny yourself, and you got to follow me. You want to find it? You got to lose it. If you choose only to live for yourself, you will only have yourself to show for yourself at the end. And we all know what happens to us in the end, right? What's the death rate hovering at for humanity? 100%, right? I mean, if all we ever live for is who we are, and this thing that we're creating for ourselves, we know how this ends. So Jesus offers this alternative, and he claims it's the secret sauce of the good life. Give up your life so that you learn it. So, for whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and the good news or the gospel will save it. What it is, it's an invitation to lose and to live our lives with purpose. If you could boil down what is Christianity, what is it all about? What's the central feature, factor? What's the point of any of this? Every week we respond to an invitation to live and to lose our lives on purpose, because everybody ends up somewhere. It's the intentional ones who end up there on purpose. And the alternative to living our lives and giving ourselves away is to live in a sense of fear. Fear always invites us to follow the path of self-preservation, right? Fear, if we're afraid of things, I'm afraid, so I'm going to make the decisions to protect myself. to make sure that my safety is of utmost priority. The self-preservation, I can't afford to be generous. I can't afford to be this way because I just don't know what the future holds with this. And so I focus on self-preservation in this way. And Peter, I think, would say, man, I'll never forget that moment when we sat down and he began to tell us what the secret sauce is. And we thought it would be one thing, and it turned out to be this other thing. And it was an invitation to kind of like lose our lives on purpose. And I sat there and I watched him and I thought, man, I don't know if I can buy into this. And then I think later on we'll see as it comes full circle. He's like, I watched him do this over and over and over and over again. First example right here. Verse 32 of chapter 10. They're on their way up to Jerusalem with Jesus leading the way. And I say up to Jerusalem, I mentioned it's south, like from where we're at. But Jerusalem sits on a hill, and so in the topography of it, they would go and they would kind of climb the hill up to Jerusalem. That's why the Psalms have lots of like verbiage of city on a hill or whatever. And they would have what they would call songs of ascent in the Psalms. These would be songs we sing as we ascend to the hill in Jerusalem, and then songs of descent that we would sing on our way out. Songs of ascent, anticipating connecting with God in the religious epicenter, and then descent as we go back into our normal life. So anyways, that's kind of how that kind of plays out, just kind of a weird fun fact. Jesus is leading the way. He's out in front, and he turns around for, again, a second time, and he's going to tell them almost the exact same verbiage, word for word, what he said earlier. We're going to go up to Jerusalem. The Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They'll condemn him to death, and will hand him over to the Gentiles. And then he gets even more aggressive and more explicit, who are going to mock him. They're going to spit on him. They're going to flog him, and they're going to kill him. So it's like, guys, this is not going to be fun. This is not going to be easy. It's not going to be great at all. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. Teacher, man, that sounds like awful. That what you just talked about, flogging, we feel really bad about all that. Nothing of that. They jump immediately, teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. This is like your kids coming up to you and be like, Mom, I'm going to ask you something, but the answer has to be yes. And you're like, well, we don't play that game, right? I mean, that's not how this works. I don't know what you're going to ask me. And the fact that you prefaced it with that definitely means it's probably a no. That's what I'm leaning towards right now, if I'm honest, right? These two disciples get up, and in the same breath at which he just talked about being flogged, beaten, killed, mocked, spit on, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that sounds awful. Hey, we need you to do something for us. Is that going to be a problem? And I just want to be yes before we even say anything, right? It's such a bad look for James and John that when another gospel writer recounts this story, he includes a character that wasn't in this version of it. He includes their mom, the mother of James and John. I think it's the same episode. I think one was just trying to be gracious and merciful and trying to not make James and John look so bad. So they said the mom came in. What can you do about moms? They're always trying to take care of their kids, right? So she asked this terrible question in the middle of this, but whatever. That's what just moms do. We write it off, right? But I think what originally happened is probably the worst of the two, which is James and John themselves, who were in Jesus' inner circle. I've mentioned Peter, James, and John. Those are like the 3 within the 12, right? But they come up to Jesus. We want you to do something for us. And Jesus responds. Here's his thing. This is the question I hope we never outgrow, no matter how big we get, right? What do you want me to do for you? What is it that you want me, with what position, authority, resources, status, influence, whatever, what do you want me to do for you? How can I help you out? If you're a good boss, you ask this of your employees all the time. How can I help you? What do you need from me? What do you want me to do for you? That's a question that's going to reappear later on as well. Here's their answer. Let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory. In other words, in their minds, he's still a king who's going to be a king, overseeing a kingdom that's actually a kingdom. Even though he said this over and over again, I'm not that kind of guy. That's not the kingdom that I've come to initiate. You think that I'm going to come and I'm going to initiate this whole new revolution and we're going to kick out Rome and Israel's going to be Israel 2.0 the way it was meant to be and Jesus is going to be on the throne and we want to be your decision makers. And they probably couch it in these terms of on your right and your left. We want to take care of all of the detail work that you don't want to focus on. You focus on what you're best at and we'll do all the nitty gritty work, right? So like probably couching it in this like, we're helping you out. But really, it's like we want to be. When people see you, we're not far off. When they look at you, we're like right there. We're in the photo. It's our faces. It's all of you, but like our faces are in there. Hey, we're here too, you know? It's kind of that sort of thing. And Jesus looks at them in his response, probably with a smile, probably after a long pause. I'm inserting that with my own thing, but I'm sure it is because we've all been asked ridiculous things before. And then he looks at them and says, you don't even know what you're asking. You wouldn't ask me this if you knew how it all worked. In the same way that your kids take you to a store and they're like, can I have this? And you're like, no, we can't, we're not buying that right now. And he's like, Dad, just swipe your card, man. They just give it to you when you swipe your card. And you're like, well, that's not how it works. You ever tried to explain how credit cards work to an 8-year-old who wants a toy? It's awful. Exactly. You know what I mean? It's like, no, you don't understand how this works. Like, eventually I have to pay for that. No, you don't, though, man. You just do this, and they just give it to you. It's crazy. Yeah, well, let me just shut it down with you don't know what it is that you're asking of me. When the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John, because of course they did. Who are you to think? I mean, I'm sure following Jesus and being one of the disciples had always been sort of a competitive thing for them, right? If I know, my guy friends and the competitiveness of all of this, it'd be like, one of them go, well, I left the fishing industry and I left my dad in the boat of our family business. I just jumped out and left, right? And Matthew's like, I left a 6-figure job as a tax collector. Well, I left it and I did that. I'm sure there's competition in all of these kind of things. And then 2 of them have the audacity to go to him and be like, yeah, but like when you get into glory, like we want to be like in the photo again, just split into small corners, but we want to be there. We want to be above the other 10 because you know our hearts and you know all this kind of stuff. And there's a sense of unfairness. I'm sure it was a sense of unfairness. Because have you ever tried to cut up a piece of candy or a sandwich for 2 kids? Have you ever done that before? And you cut it and you think this looks pretty equal, and you put it and they're like, that's not fair, he got more. And you're like, what are you talking about? And like, can you see how the angle is like, bring out the calculator, bring out the little scale, we'll weigh this. I'm telling you, he got more, right? There's like this weird battle that we have in us, and this for sure happens in this way. Jesus called them all together again in light of this whole incident. And he says to them, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Listen, you know how people in power have used, I rephrase this verse for us in a couple different versions. You know how those in position of authority leverage their authority for their own personal benefit? You notice how, like, people who have the titles at work seem to get all the perks that come with the thing of work. When there's a golf tournament coming and your business is going to be represented there, they don't really call the salespeople or the accountant to come do this. Who gets to go play in this? Right? It's the CEO, it's the CFO, it's the whoever's name is on the business. They golf in the golf tournaments. They leverage their name and their authority for their own personal benefit. And to some degree, we'd say that's fine. They do. I know. I understand it. But that's just how it works. You know that this is how it works, right? You know how those in positions of authority leverage their authority for their own personal benefit. You know how those with resources and influence leverage their resources and influence to gain even more resources and influence for themselves. You know how, like, people who are rich figure out ways to get richer for themselves? You seen that? You know how the world works, just more simplistically boiled down to, you know how the world works, man. Guys. You know how the world works. And here are the 4 words that will make you somebody worth following. It'll make you a manager worth following, a supervisor, a leader, or whatever. It'll make you a parent worth following, a friend worth following, a Christian, a follower of Christ in the way of Jesus who said, this is the best way to do life. This is the way. This is the way. You do this. Not so with you. 4 simple words. Not so with you. You've seen how everybody else does it. Not so with you. Those 4 simple words are written in Sharpie on the hallway into my study upstairs at this theater, right? It's the last 4 words, or last phrase that I see as I enter into my study, and it's the first 4 that I see as I come out and go back into whatever it is I'm doing that day. Not so with you. I don't know, like, what arena that you do and what work looks like for you, but there's a way in which everybody else kind of does things, right? And we look at it and we say, yeah, but like that's what makes them successful. Like that's what is making them so wealthy, or they make a lot of money doing it this way, and they drive really nice cars. And yeah, I get it. And Jesus would say, yeah, they do, yeah. But here's the deal: not so with you. Yeah, but like, I don't know if it's going to work in this way. That's what it takes to be successful. That's fine, Jesus would say, in your definition of what the word successful means, and I have different definition, because again, language is a real weird temporary thing, right? It carries meaning, but we can have different meanings for this. Not so with you. You're going to be different. You're going to be, if you're going to follow me, it's going to look differently for you. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must become your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. And if this sounds too ridiculous and this too unheard of, and that doesn't work in my industry, and that doesn't work with what I do, and doesn't work with my lifestyle, he says something right here to take all of our excuses away. He says, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. But it doesn't work for me. Yeah, well, here's the deal. Nobody has ever had more resources, influence, status than the Son of Man, a.k.a. Jesus himself. And he came to serve and not to be served. Which takes away all of our opportunity to be like, well, I'm a little bit... No, he's like, even I didn't have this. And it goes on, the very next verse, then they came back to the story now. He's talking to his disciples. He said, not so with you, not so with you, not so with you. Then they came to Jericho, and as Jesus and his disciples together with a large crowd were leaving the city, a blind man named Bartimaeus was sitting by the roadside begging. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, because I'm sure if you're infirmed in a physical disabled way, word is spreading about this healer who had kind of come and done this thing. He began to shout out loud, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Drawing attention to himself, have mercy on me. Many rebuked him, hey, be quiet, told him to be quiet. Don't bother him, he's busy, he's got something else going on. This is kind of weird, he's famous. You're not supposed to ask people who are famous for photos or autographs, or just leave him alone, you know what I'm saying? He's got a big crowd, he's got things to do today. But he shouted all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. And I'm sure Peter, as he's sitting there thinking this, going, I remember this so vividly. Jesus stopped and he said, call him. Get him over here. Bring him over here. He's on his way to what I would know later on, Peter would say, as the most important thing. He's on his way to be arrested, crucified, and put on trial, all this kind of stuff. And he has the audacity to stop and help a blind man out. If there was YouTube in this time, it would be one of those YouTube videos that go extremely viral. What we see is all of these sports players that they pause for a moment and they give this little kid their shoes or their hat or their jersey, and you watch and you go, oh man, he didn't have to do that, but he stopped. And he did that. And I respect that guy for that. There's something that's touching about that, right? Peter's remembering this going, I remember his mind had to be focused on the anguish of what was coming. And yet even in this moment, he stopped and had time for a blind guy who had nothing to offer him, right? Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet, this is Bartimaeus, and came to Jesus. And Jesus asked him using the same exact words that we just had just a few minutes ago with his disciples. What do you want me to do for you? What do you want me to do for you? How can I, with my leverage and my resources, my influence, status, whatever else, help you? What do you want me to do for you? With James and John, verse 52, looking over his shoulder, Jesus said loudly, do you want to sit on my right or my left? He didn't actually say that. That's my version. I added that verse in to kind of make it feel bad because I'm sure they did. But is it status? Is that what you want? You want to be on my right or my left as well? Is this what's happening? Even this blind guy, guys, doesn't want to be on my right or my left. That's how ridiculous your question was earlier. I think that's what's going on. Anyways. His response is simply this, I just want to see. I don't want any of that. I just want to be able to see. I have a physical need, and I want to see. Or I like the idea that maybe it was beyond just physical. Even if you can't heal me, help me to see why I was born blind when everybody else wasn't. I think that's a real legitimate prayer. I think that this word, I think probably the most, likely scenario is he's physically just I want my eyesight back. But another way of reading it would be, I just want to be able to see things the way that you see them. I want to know why this happened to me. A great prayer for us. God, I come before you. I have this request. I'm going through something. I need resolution in this way. But even if this doesn't resolve in the way that I want it to, help me to understand why, or help me to see things from your perspective. Because when I see things the way that you see them, perhaps I'll be more likely to obey and follow in the things and respond with the kind of response that would be what you want from me. A sense of faith or trust anyways, in spite of the circumstances, or I don't know, something beyond that. Go, your faith has healed you. Immediately received a sight and followed Jesus along the road. And then Jesus continued along his date with destiny to Jerusalem, and we'll pick up the rest of the story next week. But before we leave, in light of this activity, in light of what we've heard and the way that we've heard this, and Jesus not so with you, and what can I do for you, what can I do for you? The question that I think is worth wrestling with as we go from here, and our version of, what does it mean to walk in the way of Jesus in today's day, specifically today, what would it look like for you in whatever scenario you're at to live in a not so with you sort of way?
I would have to agree. I think we just roll with the punches, pray over it, take some meditational thoughts. Always pray before do.
Love it, man.
That's something we got to do. I also think that we have to encryptively just try to live in the moment and try to enjoy the day, because the day has enough struggles and worries of its own. It says not to worry in the Proverbs, and it's something we need to do. We also need to be able to indicate and give others gratitude.
Sure.
Because others are important as well too. We don't need to be so highly boastful. Do not be boastful. Do not be prideful.
Can I stop you right there? Can you and I catch up after this? I got people watching online. They can't hear you, and so I don't want it to be awkward for them. So you and I will chat though. Is that all right? Okay, sounds good. What does it take? Not so with you. You're a student, you're a leader, you're a boss, you're this. You got all kinds of options. This is the way, this is the way, this is the secret sauce, this is the vision of the good life. Yeah, but not so with you. How does it look differently? What if? This is an invitation to live and to lose our life on purpose, to leverage our power and resources for the benefit of those with less power and fewer resources. This is always the direction that he is leading us in. And there's something about it that when we see it, there's something that resonates with us at the core of our being. I was thinking about it last night, and there's a new movie that just came out, The Quiet Place 2, and I haven't seen it yet, but I remember watching the first one with my wife, and I think we saw it in the theater. And in that movie, Jim Halpert, we'll call him that because that's how we know him, is the dad, and it's the monsters can hear the noise, and he finds himself in this scenario where it's going to be either his kids or him, and he's looking at it, and before he kind of sacrifices himself so that his kids can live, he looks at one of his kids and says, "I love you, I've always loved you," right? In case you've ever doubted it, you thought maybe this kid was like, I don't know if dad really likes him, kind of a hindrance. He looks at him, he makes the sign language, "I love you, I've always loved you," and then he makes enough noise to kind of draw the monster away from the kids. And we see that, and we look at that, and we watch this movie, and we're like, oh man, we resonate so clearly with this guy, right? And we're like I would want to be the type of dad that would do that. I would like to think that I don't respond in fear, because fear always leads us to self-preservation. Instead, live into this. Why do we love this? I think it's an archetype for the kind of love that Jesus invited us to. And I think that this is in the mindset of Peter too, who is recalling this 30 years later, remembering Jesus saying, live and lose your life on purpose, live and lose your life on purpose. And in practical ways, he showed up, and when he was approached by people in need, he would say, what can I do for you? What can I do for you? What can I do for you? How can I leverage my resources and abilities to help you out? And then I think ultimately that he would stand in the back of the crowd and watch as in Jerusalem, as it would come in a few chapters later, and he's being unjustly put on trial and eventually crucified, hanging from this cross, looking down. And I think in his mind he realized this is just the apex of this. This is what he's been talking about the entire time. He's looking at it, and forever and ever, with a gleam in his eye, he's been inviting us to do this. And he said, I'll show you how to do it. And then in his most Lin-Manuel Miranda sort of way, saying, just you wait. Like, wait till you see it. Wait until you feel it. Wait until you, smell it in this way. Like, it's going to be so in front of you, you're not going to know what to do with your life. And I realized in those moments as he's hanging there, he did this. This was the plan the whole time. This wasn't an accident. He didn't not see this coming. The reason he came down here was for this, to show us in the most example, to live your life truly, you give it away. So a question that we should never outgrow for those of us who call ourselves Christian: what can I do to help? With what I have, how do I help you? Not because we're related, not because you're my blood relative, not because you're my progeny, you're my kid, but beyond that and even more than that. What can I do to help? Let's pray. Father, our prayer is that you would challenge us, that you would wake us up to this invitation, that we would be the type of people that would respond with this question, what can I do to help, with what I have, that we would intentionally find ways to give ourselves away to live in a unique way, to love others in the same way that you've loved us, and that would be what we are known for, that would be the classic example of what it means to be a follower of Christ. Give us the wisdom to what that looks like in our life, the courage to act on it in your name. Amen. Hey, a couple of quick announcements, and then I'm getting you out of here. One is there's a Connect card inside of your program that you were handed on the way in. It's got a little Connect card piece that looks like this, spot on the back to be able to mark down some next steps. If you're a guest with us today, first or second time, make sure to mark that box in the lower left-hand side. This is first or second time guest. We donate money for every first-time guest to a different organization doing good things locally and globally. It rotates every month, and for the month of June, we're giving money to Mo's Place, which is the local organization, nonprofit that works with resourcing foster care families in the Tri-Cities, they're doing awesome work. We're actually featuring them in our June Back Alley event as well, which Lauren mentioned in the video. Each month, we're doing one event on the fourth Friday of each month out in the back alley right behind this wall. We're doing a trivia night the first night, comedy night, and then a live concert. Just as the Friday night under the stars, come and hang out. It's not churchy. It's not like anything like that. It's just a great opportunity to invite a friend who would be like, I'm not really a church person. I would never show up for a Sunday morning thing, but let me come and see what you guys do in the community. And I think that would be a great front door opportunity for that. There's no cost to any of them other than the trivia night. There is like a suggested donation for the team thing, so we can give money to the organization. We're not making any money off of it. We're giving everything towards most places, $25 for a team of up to 6. If you mark your card that says trivia night, we'll send you information on that and get you signed up. But hopefully you can make it that. Would you stand? I'm going to read a closing benediction for you and then get you on your way. Here's what it says. Lord, you invite us to follow you on the way that leads to life, and yet so often we stray toward death. Thank you that we are still alive because of your patience and mercy. Teach us to mirror your forgiveness in our relationships with one another. Amen. May that go with you this week, whatever it is that you're facing. Next week, part 6 of You're Not Far. We'd love to have you back. I'm invited John Inman and his wife Leslie. They're on our leadership team, as well as Jim and Kelly. If you've got something you're going through, we'd love prayer. They're going to be down here at the front. We'd love to make that happen. I'll be in the lobby, and we'd love to connect. If you're new and we've never met, that'd be great. Other than that, have a great week, guys. See you next week.